Hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome to Secondary School Advising's Benefits of Boarding School event. We are so thrilled to have you all here, and definitely one of our favorite events of the year. We have, well, first, I am Charlene Kometz, Director of Secondary School Advising at Carroll. I am also joined by my two amazing team members and colleagues, Francie Fenton, you can give a wave or
hi there.
Hi, and Cece McNally. Hi. And we are also thrilled to have 5 outstanding panelists with us tonight from Brewster, Kimball Union, New Hampton, Proctor, and St. Andrews. And we are asking that our guest speakers tonight present on some general information. We're going to have some topics we're going to go over, and then there's going to be some specific information on programming and lots of other fun stuff. I don't want to give it all away just yet. And what I'd like at this point is if each of our panelists could introduce themselves. I should have probably forefronted this for you. Tell a little bit about your school, and perhaps a fun fact would be terrific. So what I will do is I'm open to volunteers, or I could ask. Would anyone like to go first?
Sure, I'll jump on the grenade.
Thanks, Nick.
Someone has to, right? Hi, everyone. My name is Nick Wilbur, and I'm the Director of Enrollment Management at Brewster Academy. This is my 6th year here. I'm actually currently located in Colorado, so excited to be here tonight and welcome all of you. We are a school of about 350 or so students in Wolfboro, New Hampshire. And our fun fact is we have a half-mile of lake frontage on our campus.
Thanks very much, Nick. Would anyone else like to jump in, or I can assign it? How about if I just go around?
I'll go.
All right. Oh, Lee.
Lee.
Go for it.
Well, thanks for including me, Carroll School. I scrolled through the participant list to see if I recognize any names. I do see a Concord friend on there. Hi, Leslie. I represent Kimball Union Academy, but I did work at Carroll for a number of years. So Carroll people are very special to me. Kimball Union Academy is in Meriden, New Hampshire. We're about 340 students on about 1,600 acres, actually. It's a wonderful place, and I'm thrilled to be a rather new Director of Enrollment Management there. I don't think I can top Nick's fun fact. It's hard for me to, there are many fun facts about KUA. You'll hear about them later. So maybe I'll pop it to Lee since she was also willing.
And I also want to add, you could add a fun fact about yourself. It could be about the school, or it could be something interesting. I think I recall Nick's from last year. I think growing up with like 4 sisters or something to that effect. Okay, Lee.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I am Lee McGregor. I am representing St. Andrews School in Barrington, Rhode Island tonight. I work in the admissions office primarily from the lens of learning services. I am a career learning specialist, and so that is my lens within the admissions office. We have a team that works very closely together. And St. Andrews is a middle school through upper school campus. We have about 220 students. So in our upper school, we have about 185. We are in a suburb of Providence, Rhode Island. So we're near the city, but we're in a pretty suburban town right on the water. A fun fact is that our school mascot is Pal the dog, and we have many faculty dogs that live on campus. I think there are 7, and my dog Maggie comes with me very often. In fact, I always ask families to let me know if there are any allergies because I would need to leave Maggie home that day. So we are a very dog-friendly campus, you will find when you come visit us at St. Andrews.
Thanks very much, Lee. We appreciate that introduction. All right, Chris, how about you go?
All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris Bartlett. I'm the Dean of Enrollment at Proctor Academy, located in the real Andover, which is Andover, New Hampshire. We are on a little shy of 3,000 acres, nestled between Ragged Mountain and Mount Kearsarge. I think I said, did I say 375 students? Yeah, so fun fact about Proctor, I just came off our mountain biking trails. We have about 8 new miles of single track. So if you like biking, this could be a cool place. So there's my fun fact.
Thank you. All right, Nick.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Ellis. First of all, thank you for joining us tonight. I work at New Hampton School. This is my 3rd year here. I work in the admission office. And I might be biased because I went to boarding school. My brother went to boarding school, and I've been working in boarding school since I pretty much graduated from college. But I truly believe it's the best form of education. So I'm really excited to speak to you all tonight about the benefits of boarding school. New Hampton School is about 340 students with an average class size of around 11. We're located in central New Hampshire, about 90 miles north of Boston. And our student to teacher ratio is about 5-1. One fun fact about our school is that we actually own a mountain called Burley Mountain. And once a year, one of our favorite traditions is to hike up Burley Mountain on a beautiful fall day. The head of school calls school off for the day, and we hike up there and see the view of our campus from there. I'm also a house parent, so if you hear any door slamming, knocks, or anything like that, I'm in my apartment, which is connected to a dorm. And so that's probably what you're going to be hearing a little bit of. So I apologize in advance.
Thanks, Nick. And thank you all for those wonderful introductions and fun facts. In the audience tonight, or those joining us, we understand we have primarily 8th and 9th grade parents, families, could be grandparents. We may have some students who are also have signed on tonight. And we also know that, many of you that have joined this meeting have already decided boarding school is definitely a wonderful place, and you can see that for the future for your 8th or 9th grader. We know we have some families and students who have now put it in the mix, and we're thrilled. And we also have some families that we asked, please attend, because you're going to learn some really wonderful information about what schools to have to offer that you'll be able to take on your search. So thank you all in the audience for being here. And I just want to let you know that moving on in the structure of the evening, again, we're going to be offering some topics and questions we're going to put out to the panelists, and they're going to volunteer potentially to contribute and comment. And we will allow for approximately 30 minutes reserved at the end of the presentation for Q&A. You are welcome. Again, I'm just going to reiterate what Jen offered, which is that we have the Q&A at the bottom of the Zoom, and throughout the presentation, you may put in your questions, and we will do our best to answer those at the end. So I'm going to begin with the first topic, which is always an interesting one, which is the dorm and housing life. This is the topic we're going to start with. A source of curiosity, perhaps uneasiness for some families, is often like the idea of their child living someplace else or other than at home. And what is that adjustment like? So maybe some of you can volunteer right off the bat and let us know, what is that adjustment like for a 9th or onboarding 10th grader to go from living at home to living in a dorm? And what do you do to make the students comfortable when they arrive? So I will take a volunteer. Whoever would like to go first can let me know.
I can go ahead.
Go ahead, Nick.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm a house head or a dorm head in a dorm, and I have sophomore boys, and so a lot of them are new this year. And so what we did is the first weekend we have a lot of activities as a dorm that we'll do together. We'll order food on that Saturday night. They'll come in, usually move in on a Thursday or Friday. We'll have, a meal together on a Saturday night, and we'll do various activities to get to know each other. This year we made dorm signs. Each student kind of made a unique dorm sign that represents who they are, and they shared it with the group. So we do a lot of activities in that first weekend in order for them to make connections with their friends and their dorm mates, as well as the dorm parents as well. And I think at all these schools were small schools, and so the dorms are rather small. My dorm is about 18 students. And so the house parents really have an eye on our students and can see and know when a student might be having a tough adjustment and ways in order to best support that student in their adjustment to boarding school and living away from home.
Thanks. Leslie, would you like to add on to that?
Sure. I might just add, I mean, any one of us can speak to this, but I was also thinking about not just the initial period of adjustment, because I know boarding school is a big leap of faith for Carroll families. But to me, the real selling point and why I think probably a lot of us still work in boarding schools is that you have all these role models around you, and not just the adults, as Nick was talking about, like house head and your advisor and people, the adults whose job it is to keep an eye on kiddos and make sure they're feeling good and adjusting well. But you also, depending on the size of the dorm or the way the dorms are located on campus, you have the older students too, looking out for the kids. And I sometimes find that that's almost as important part of the adjustment as the adults around, is how the older kids look out for the new students, take them under their wing in varying environments. Sorry, that's my dog in the back. So I just wanted to add that piece, that all of us have these layers in our community of the ways that we really look out for students. And then when the new students come to boarding school, their sense of independence and their sense of themselves away from their parents gets really magnified because they have so many role models around them. So I just wanted to add that piece.
Thank you, Leslie. Does anyone want to add on how the roommate selection happens? Chris, you're smiling.
Yeah, it's because it's such an interesting question, and I would love to know how other schools do it, but we certainly solicit information from families. So the students and parents would fill out a questionnaire around sort of sleep habits, musical preferences. Are you a neat freak or a slob? All these sort of personality questions. But at the end of the day, we spend a lot of time in a room sort of talking through, like, who is this student? What are they really all about? What is their personality like? And it's sort of how we choose advisors and roommates and actually sometimes even teaching faculty who are going to match up with who a student really is. And I would say that probably about 90% of the time, those roommate pairings work out pretty darn well. Occasionally there's an opportunity for students to, have some mediation because they don't know how to communicate that they're not getting enough sleep or that their roommate is doing something that's bothering them. So there's a lot of intentionality when you get to our schools in terms of how we manage these kinds of things. So it's kind of a long answer, but the roommate, the sort of magical roommate pairing sometimes actually happens, but when it doesn't, there's so many great systems in place to kind of teach students how to work through those challenges, which is a huge part of the educational process, right? Because, dealing with adversity is one of the great things about boarding school. It's like, you're not in your tiny little bubble anymore. You're actually having to navigate relationships, with other students and adults, and it's really healthy. So.
Great. Did anyone else want to, thank you very much, Chris, weigh in on just dorm or housing life and kind of that? Lee, please, thank you.
Yeah, well, just one thing I wanted to add, and I think that Leslie had spoken to this, is the idea of dorm proctors. That is something that is a real big honor and deal at St. Andrews. I know within our dorm system, our students, and I think this is probably the case at most schools, students really have to go through a process of interviewing for those positions. So a dorm proctor is an upperclassman who wishes to take on a leadership role within a dorm. And it usually involves a real, interview process, a real sort of reflective process on the student's part about why they would like to be in that role within the dorm setting. And so those student leaders are really integral to acclimating our new students on campus. They take on a large role in the dorms in terms of planning those orientation events and getting to know you. They also serve oftentimes as that first confidant. If a student is struggling, the relationship that the dorm proctor has formed with those new students really often serves as the person that they might go to first. So as Leslie said, there really are these layers, and those students really have gone through that beginning process of being a new student on campus. And I think it is their experience and how transformational it's been for them that makes them want to give back and sort of serve in that capacity. So I think, it's, as a parent myself, that thought of watching those first few weeks, even that first 6 weeks. I think that first 6 weeks is such a big, is really an important time at any school, but in particular in that boarding setting, to allow kids to sort of feel those feelings of being a little untethered, but having to reestablish those roots within a new community and figure out where to find their supports. And then again, in terms of the roommate issue, it's all of us at all of these schools, I think, almost agonize over these decisions about who will be rooming with whom. And so all of the information that we gain through the admissions process is really important, and then shared, with the academic team, with the residential life team. I don't know how many emails I got over the summer from the director of our residential life and our academic team about pairing kids. So just rest assured from one mom to another, that there are a lot of people really caring about these decisions and really thinking very carefully about how to place your children. And then there again, if there are bumps, and how to navigate those with your children on campus.
Thank you very much, Leah. Appreciate that. I'm going to move on to academic support. And this is something I would like everyone to weigh in on, as we understand how full a student's day is in high school. And families are very curious about what the academic support looks like at your schools, and when would that fit into their schedule, and how does that look? So I would love if we could just go around, and I would ask each of you to talk about, just, give a synopsis and a reasonable amount of time. And we want to make sure everybody gets here. So I'm going to start with, in my corner, because I get to see everybody. I'm going to start with Nick Ellis. Oh, I've got two Nicks. This is tough. Okay. Sorry about that. Nick Ellis. He's up in my right corner.
All right.
From New Hampton.
So we have the academic support program, which is utilized by about 25% of our students. So there really isn't a stigma towards being in the academic support program. It's really part of the fabric of our school. And the academic support program is just like a class. So just like a student would have science, they would also have academic support built into their academic day. We offer one-on-one, two-on-one, or group tutorial. And it's really content driven. And through that content, the student will learn the study skills and habits that they need in order to be successful. Our academic support program teachers are not only teachers at New Hampton. They're also dorm parents, advisors, coaches. So they're fully involved in the community, and they're not just coming in just for the academic support program session. So they are very much involved in the community and involved in your students' life after hours, whether that is making sure that they're getting their laundry done, dropping their laundry off the correct day, and everything in between. So it's truly 24/7 support from the academic support program teachers.
Great. Thanks so much, Nick. How about Nick Wilbur from Brewster?
So we have 3 distinct plans, and the plans determine the amount of days in which you have what we would define or call instructional support. So 3 days a week, 2 days a week, or 1 day a week. And it's built in as an academic class. So it's built right into the student schedule. And within that class period, they have one-on-one time with the fellow student. So they have 2 students to 1 faculty member, and then the student would have some time on their own to do some work. So within every session, there are different ways in which that they can go through the work that they're tackling that given day or that week. Our learning specialists are people who dive into any kind of literature, paperwork that we have, whether it be a neuropsychological evaluation or an IEP on every student who comes, and they create a customized plan for every single student at that given time. And they meet with their team of teachers 3 days a week to really make sure and drill in that what's being worked on during the session is actually being implemented in the classroom. So for sake of everyone's time, I'll stop there, but that's the quick part.
Great. Thanks, Nick. All right, Chris, you're up.
Yeah, so you'll hear some similar themes from all of us in terms of sort of integrated learning support. So for Proctor, it's about 1/3 of our student body. We have 15 learning specialists on staff. Generally, students are meeting 3 to 4 times a week in a 2-on-1 setting, really focused on, again, sort of skills and strategies and leveraging content to sort of reinforce skills and strategies. I'll just add one other piece, which is when you look at these boarding schools and you see the fact that we have these really robust learning skills, learning centers, academic support programs. The other piece to what we all offer, which is sort of invaluable, is the fact that you have incredible access to teaching faculty. So when I'm speaking with prospective families about learning support at Proctor, we can talk about the Learning Center, but we also want to be talking about the fact that kids right now, as we speak, are at math extra help, Spanish extra help. They're working with a classroom teacher to work on a rough draft for a paper. They might be in the dormitory getting help from a student, right? So it's this whole 360-degree wraparound support that comes along with these incredible learning center programs that really makes the kind of the value proposition sort of incredible. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you, Chris.
Mhm.
Lee, I would love to hear about learning support at St. Andrews.
Sure. So piggybacking on what Chris just said, I think it's important to think about the whole school and the support that's embedded in the whole school. So 30% of our student body does access our learning services program, and we have robust learning services programs that I will talk about. But our whole school really has what we call universal practices. So wherever you are in a classroom at St. Andrews, whether you're enrolled in learning services or not, you can expect that there will be certain universal practices that teachers will be engaged in, such as an agenda on the board, written, on the board at the beginning of class, no pop quizzes, frequent comprehension checks, all of these things that we know to be good for all of our learners. So there's an agreement within our community about good teaching practice and supportive teaching practice, regardless of your status as a student enrolled in learning services or not. From there, we do have, as I said, 30% of our student bodies enrolled in our learning services program, which really is, there's a base of what we call academic workshop which is really taking the academic content that students are engaged in, but infusing it with executive function support. So our learning specialists are leading small groups of 5, maybe 6 students in academic workshop. And that's daily in 9th and 10th grade. It moves to every other day for longer periods of time in 11th and 12th as we try to build a little bit more independence. Those same learning specialists are co-teaching our math and English classes. So those are integrated classes. Our students enrolled in learning services are in those co-taught classes, but there are students that are not enrolled in learning services in those classes. So our learning specialists are not only in these kind of separate classes, but they're engaged in the curriculum on a daily basis. So they really have their finger on the pulse, so to speak. Beyond that, we offer services in OG. We have math tutors. We have more deeper dive in executive function. We also have speech and language pathologists who can do expressive and receptive language work, as well as social pragmatics. And also, again, the after school connection to teachers. We have study halls in the evening, and there are levels sort of structured study hall dependent upon student need.
Great. Thanks so much, Lee. And Leslie.
Quick, I'll cover my KUA distinction points. A lot of things are similar here. We have both small group support, SST, and we have individual one-on-one support called ILT. And depending on level of need, we gauge how many days in rotation a student would need. So we do offer those things. Our teachers in the Learning Center, the Teaching and Learning Center, are led by our indomitable director, Ann Peterson, who is really extraordinary, quite passionate, and reminds me of a lot of the people that I worked with at Carroll School. She just gets it in her bones. One thing that I think makes KUA really distinct in the way we operate our Teaching and Learning Center is that our teachers, Learning Center teachers, rotate in so that they are all classroom teachers who teach other things, and then they also teach in the Learning Center, which is a really different model that I love. Because a lot of parents will ask me, how do teachers know how do the main teachers know how to support kids who are part of the Learning Center? It's embedded, it's natural. And so the teachers will rotate in on a yearly basis, which I think really improves the communication and buy-in throughout the community. And the last thing I'll add is that starting this summer, we are running all of our teacher professional development through our Teaching and Learning Center. So that's a big paradigm shift, so that our Learning Center isn't just it has often been in places sort of like a satellite, something that's kind of a push in. And now Ann Peterson, our director, works closely with our head of school and directs all professional development. So there's a lot of embedded quality at KUA in terms of how we support our kids.
Great. Thank you so much, Leslie. And thank you all of you for that input. I actually want to add that CC, Francie, and I's recent tour amongst many of the schools here tonight, what we were able to exhibit firsthand and what we hear often and always is that the beautiful part about the support at all of these schools is it is looked at as just like a gift, and the students that aren't receiving it are kind of a little jealous because and I've heard that verbatim from one of my tour guides saying, yeah, I don't have support. The gal did, who was with the young lady. And he said, but all I know is my friends love it. And I kind of think, wow, I wish I had that person to go to. And I wish I had that. So I just love that all of you have instilled this culture of just belonging, and everybody's success is whatever's good for you is good for you. And some of you people want actually to get their hands on that support that don't necessarily need it. And so I really appreciate the integration of the support programming in all of your schools. And again, our team has witnessed that firsthand. So I just want to kind of cap that off there. I'm going to move on to the admissions process, which is where we're kind of right now. We have many families and students that are in the information collection stage where they are going to open houses and scheduling their tours and their interviews and developing school lists. Some have already refined some of their school lists. And it is very exciting, can also be a little bit of a source of anxiety. What we hope at Carroll, our department, as a resource to bounce ideas after they've visited with you and talk about the process and guide them through. But we would like to know from you, what are some tips and something might be different about your admissions process this year, or advice you can give families about how to prepare for the interview? What kind of, I don't know about what kind of questions, but even, is it something where you want to talk about like the neuropsych report being as part of your application, or whatever it might be that you have to offer? We would welcome that. So who would like to start? I know it's so exciting.
Well, I'll start. I think first and foremost, all of us as schools are welcome and celebrate neurodiversity. And so being that that's a big piece to our schools, be open with us, share as soon as possible so that we can get to more of the nitty gritty of how our distinct programs are going to support you as a parent, but also your kids. And that just gives you a better, cleaner way to navigate all this information and be able to really decipher through what program delivery is best for you as a family and for your kid. So share as much as you are comfortable sharing, and then just take notes and be a little OCD about everything, is kind of just a suggestion. Clearly, I'm naturally OCD, otherwise I wouldn't bring it up.
True.
I don't know if that's a fun fact about me or not, but so I would just say be open, because ultimately this collection of schools have a history of supporting students from Carroll School and having students who have done incredibly well from Carroll. And so we are ready and prepared to help you in this process.
Thank
Charlene,
you
do
very
you mind-
much. All right,
Do you mind if I
Leslie.
piggyback? Yeah, I was just going to say,
Please, I would
Nick,
love the more information, the better.
yeah, Nick nailed it. And I don't really have anything to say. I agree. Like us here on this call and the schools that are recommended by Charlene, Francie, and Cece are going to be good allies. I would say if you're looking at schools that are a little outside of that realm, you should ask think of those people, ask them questions that you would ask of people at Carroll School. Those of us on this call are going to be the kind of people who are going to be allies and will be well-versed in what the neuropsych represents and how that translates to our school. But if you're looking at schools, not us on the call, ask those same questions and think of it sort of like, how can I compare that to my Carroll experience? And because you should trust your instincts on it, what I'm saying, ask hard questions. I'm kind of like contrasting Nick's point about we're all here as trusting partners. And if you diverge from that a little bit, just to be curious, that's a great thing. Check, give a vibe check and see how they answer those tough questions.
Great. Thank you, Leslie. Chris, would you like to add on there?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is just use the process. And what I mean by that is, students who are visiting campuses right now in October are not going to have to make a decision until April. And there's a lot of growth and change that can happen over this period of time. So I always say to students, you don't have to gamify. This isn't a game. We're just like Nick and Leslie were saying, we're just here to help you, and we're facilitating a process. And the more touches you have with a school, the more questions you ask, the more times you come back to campus, the more you're just leveraging that process. And at the end of the day, if you are admitted to some schools and you have some choices, that's a great thing. And the process will help you find those right places. And maybe there's going to be some disappointment. Maybe you're not going to get into a school, but maybe that school is not a good fit. So therefore, again, the process is going to help you figure that out. So
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I'd love to hop in real quick.
Would love that, Nick.
Thank you. So obviously, you know, the admission process can be intimidating, but it really is an exciting time for you to really get to know yourself and what you're looking for in a school, and for us just to get to know you a little bit better. We want to get to know you as a person, as a student, what your passions are, what your interests are. And so when you're visiting schools, really think about, you know, can I picture myself in this classroom? Did I get a good vibe from campus and from my tour guide? So it's a really fun opportunity for you to learn more about yourself through the application process, and for us just to learn more about you, because at the end of the day, we just want to know, you know, who you are, what you're looking for, and your passions and your interests.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to add on to that subject area, or we feel pretty good about that? All right, I'm going to move on to extracurricular offerings. So what are, you know, we know that boarding schools and day schools and public schools all have extracurricular activities. What are the non-academic components of a boarding school? This could cover res life, athletics, arts, clubs, leadership opportunities. And do you have any requirements within that? And I would love to hear from kind of each of you on a tidbit. I'm sure some of it's going to be very similar, but I'd love to hear some information on that. I'm sure our families would as well.
You know, I might, before I list like K-way specific things, I wanted to share just a quick experience of mine as being a parent. Now, my kids aren't boarders, but they're day students at boarding schools right now. And I just wanted to add, there's this really wonderful simplification that happens when you either send your child to boarding school or send them as a day student to a boarding school, meaning their whole lives, all of it, academics, athletics, arts, clubs, you know, community service is all there. It's all there at this one school. And all of us are going to have this like vibrant, busy, all-encompassing life for our students, whether they're boarding or day. And I've been really struck now that I'm a parent of a student who attends a boarding school, two of them actually. I don't have to leave work early to take them to practice. I don't need to do any of those sorts of like add-on things anymore because it's all there. So I might lay that as a framework for all of us and let one of my colleagues jump in, but we all have vibrant schedules that allow for wider range of athletics, arts endeavors. I think probably all of us, and you guys can correct me, have created schedules so that you don't have to choose between athletics and arts. You can play an instrument in an ensemble, in a band, play a varsity sport, do community service. I think all of our schools have gotten to a place where we've created schedules so that kids can be as involved as they want to be, and they don't have to choose between this and that anymore. They can do it all.
Thank you, Leslie, for that perspective. That was really terrific. But I would love to hear some other perspectives on that in terms of just offerings that might be different, newer things.
One thing I would like to add on to that, if I may.
Sure.
And it was actually a Carroll student that has come to us who remarked that now that he's not driving back and forth to Carroll, he has so much more time for his passions. And I think right there are probably so many students that haven't had the amount of time in their day that they suddenly do when they're at a boarding school, and the amount of time that they have to pour into activities that they love. And so I think that's an important thing to think about, you know, the time that you may recoup as a family for your child by embracing the boarding school experience, especially if you're a commuting family. So I thought that was a very mature and spot on observation of this young man, that all of a sudden he has all this time to pour into his passions. And all of us have so many offerings for students. And I think that what I would say is that students, these 4 years are really meant to continue your passions, but also to find your passions, to explore things that you haven't been exposed to before. And so I know that the size that we have at St. Andrews, and I think it's the same for all of the schools here, we're that perfectly pitched size where we really need kids to be involved in all areas, and we want kids to be involved in all areas. So my advice is to go into your 4 years, go into high school experience, not needing to just be one thing, but to really take the time to explore those off the beaten path offerings that you might not, otherwise have been exposed to.
Great. Thank you, Lee.
Darlene, can I add one piece?
Please. Yes.
I do think it's important to, as you begin to narrow your search of schools, really actually figure out, do they actually have a hard requirement and are they restrictive to you in terms of what you can do in the afternoons or not? i.e., do they require you to do 2 interscholastic sports as a 9th grader or 10th grader? Does it change when you get as an older student? Because if you are a parent out there listening and your kid wants nothing to do with interscholastic athletics and never has, this is important, and you need to do your research and figure that out. I'm not going to go into Brewster specifically. I'm happy to chat about that, but I do think it's an important piece that you should be thinking about in terms of where are those places that your child finds their people and finds their comfort. Yes, they should be pushed a little bit to broaden their scope and how they see the world and their experiences. But I do think it's an important piece to make sure that you all know and understand exactly what that school is going to ask of your child on an afternoon basis. Regardless of all the schools, they have an afternoon requirement. So it's not time to twiddle thumbs or do whatever. But how that school determines that's work that I think all of you should be thinking about and looking into.
And just
Thank
to
you,
add
Lee.
on to what everyone else has said, obviously, at New Hampton, these boarding schools, you have to do something in the afternoon every season, whether that's a sport or, an art, theater, things like that. But I think the biggest thing is that students are able to explore their passions, and at the same time, you're eliminating that driving and everything. So we see it time and time again where students are actually a lot more successful at New Hampton than at their previous school because of the structure and how much time they get back from commuting to sports and then going to play practice. So everything being on one campus allows them to be more successful academically because there's more time and they're never going to be missing class for athletics or any other co-curricular event, which I think is huge and something that a lot of our students really enjoy, is the fact that they can be successful in academics, never miss school, but also be able to continue to explore or discover their passions outside of the classroom.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would just add that, like, it's also just to add on to what Nick is saying, that the other thing that's really interesting is your social life is also in this sort of bubble, right? So, I mean, I hate to say it because it's probably going to hurt some feelings, but kids love boarding school because you're with your friends all the time, right? You have this sort of social milieu around you. That's pretty exciting as well to add to that, that array of extracurriculars that students are doing as well. So, yeah.
Thanks, Chris. It's okay to say that kids love boarding school.
Yeah, but I don't want to
and
imply
that's
that they
why
don't
we're
love
here
their-
tonight, because we know there are students and families that love boarding school and they need to hear more about it. And we love hearing all of this. And again, from our firsthand experience with visiting all kinds of schools, and because tonight we are focusing on those benefits of boarding school, and having witnessed again firsthand seeing a student's artwork in the hallway of one of your schools, and the student revealing that they didn't know they had that capability within them, and they had an award, but they're also doing something completely different, playing a sport and also in theater. And I just love how the communities within boarding schools embrace the support for everyone, and they are also kind of championing for each group, right? So you can be in the theater and everybody's going to the play, and everybody's going to support the game, whether you're an athlete or not. And I think these are some of the things where you're on campus. What you're saying is because you're there and you're all going to go then have dinner together. That's just a great component. And I hope that was able to be conveyed through everybody. I think that's really terrific. So actually, on even a lighter topic, I wanted to bring up weekends. What are weekends like at a boarding school? And what is, are any of you 5-day boarding? That tends to come up as a question. So I kind of asked a question in advance, but if you could tell us a little bit about what your weekends are like. I know that, again, last few years have been really interesting. I think that your weekends have been robust, no matter what, but I'd love to hear what are weekends like at your school, and how do you kind of embrace that as a community?
So, excuse me, as a majority of New Hampshire boarding schools here, I think I can speak for everyone. We don't do the 5-day boarding thing. And so the majority of our kids are on campus as a full 7-day boarding program. And so it is a goal and a hope that we not only have robust offerings, but those offerings are filled by lots of kids. And we don't want to be, there's a term out there as a suitcase school. And we don't want to have our campuses be those who domestically fly in or our international subset of students on our campus during the weekends. And so that's a really important piece when we're thinking about just the vibrancy of all of our campuses over the weekends. At Brewster, we are a rotating 5- and 6-day school week. So every other Saturday, our students have the morning off. They will have a commitment. Usually it stems around their afternoon commitment within the afternoon, and they'll meet as a team or as a program or committee or club, whatever the scenario might be. In terms of the weekends, we're really fortunate and lucky that we have the town of Wolfboro walking distance from campus. Our kids have been asking to go to Portland, Maine more and more. And then they hit up Portsmouth as well. We tend to stay on the eastern side of Lake Winnipesaukee. And so those are the main hotspots that we have. In the winter, we'll go up north and we'll go skiing. A lot of the mountains have lights. So we'll do that as well.
Great. Thank you very much. Who else would like to jump on that weekend fun track?
I can jump in on that just because I was just.
We're just going to keep the Knicks together. We're just going to keep you going back to back.
Perfect. Just because I was on duty last weekend and I actually saw Proctor down at Target and Chipotle. So we have various weekend activities. So last weekend I took a group down to Target, Concord, and then we stopped at Chipotle, and Proctor was in front of us at Chipotle. So the food took a little bit of time, but that's okay. And then we always take advantage of our area that surrounds us. So we're always have trips, hiking trips, skiing trips to Ragon on the weekends. Snow tubing is a big one. Then we'll also have, different recreational, games on campus, whether that's broomball, which is really popular, a dodgeball, basketball, something like that. So there's always something to do on campus, but I just wanted to put a plug in that I saw Proctor down at Target and Chipotle last weekend.
I'm sure our students were extremely polite, Nick. Thank you.
Oh, they were great.
I would just add that that in addition to sort of off-campus trips, which I think all of our schools would run, like a lot of the fun actually happens by leveraging the facilities that we have, right? So, you've got a hockey rink, you've got gyms, so it's easy to have dodgeball and skating. And, we have a little ski hill on campus. So kids, a lot of times we offer trips and students are like, yeah, that's great, but I want to go to the student center and watch the Patriots game on the big screen with my friends and, get nachos. Like it's so there's you can sort of play it both ways. If you want to get off campus, you can definitely get off campus, but a lot of times the students are happy to be with their buddies, taking advantage again of these incredible campuses that we all have and these facilities. So
Great, Chris. Anyone else like to add on what their weekends are like at their school?
I would just add that to Chris's point, that there's often a couple of different options, so there's like the Target run, there's the kind of errand thing. There's usually something happening on campus that's more of a cozy kind of stay in your pajamas and, something that's just hunkering down on campus. And then there's trips that we have like to utilizing Providence or going further to Boston, or we sometimes have ski outings ourselves. There's a little ski club, but certainly not as often as the New Hampshire schools here. But one thing I thought I would add is that we have a 50-50 boarding and day split. So it's an interesting kind of dynamic. But what we see is that so all of our day students are welcome to come from breakfast through after dinner. And also they can sign up to come to the weekend activities. And we have a high percentage of our day students who choose to do that. And so what I think is interesting, just sort of given the past few years that we've all been through, is that ability to have in-person social interaction is huge. Having these boarding communities, having 7-day a week planned activities for kids is really harder and harder to come by outside of this kind of boarding school community. And I know that I've talked to a lot of parents who are so grateful to have that opportunity for their kids to really be socializing in person to that degree. So it's an interesting thing that even the students that are day students, a large percentage choose to come back to our campus on the weekend to do these trips, even if it is just to Target with their friends, because it is something that's organized in a way that they're not necessarily finding outside of the school community.
Great. Thanks, Lee. Anyone else? Are you feeling pretty good? All right. So I'm going to ask, does anyone want to talk about any kind of signature programs that you might offer that, you're able to offer being a boarding school versus if you were a day school, for instance? Anyone?
I might just say we probably all have ones that we're thinking of. I don't know if people.
You can just say them. We won't, we'll just, it's good to know what's out there. What is the difference, and not so much about your school as much as something that you're able to offer that maybe you wouldn't if you were, driving again a half hour to your school and then coming home for dinner or doing different things.
Yeah, I'll go fast since we're approaching our Q&A session. We have a number of different scholar programs at KUA, Global Scholars Program, STEM Scholars, Arts Scholars, and these are ways for our students to really double down or take on more independence within those kind of realms. So without going into too much detail, it's a way, it reminds me of if you were a day student, you would probably go join a community-based organization for something like this. Or you would have, music lessons, or you would join a music group outside of your school. Sometimes if you're a day student, especially in a public school, but at our school, we basically have created these opportunities where you get some high school credit and you're able to, for example, travel abroad as part of this program, or do a portfolio capstone project as one of the arts scholars. So without going into too much detail, I think a lot of us have programs like that allow students, again, we were talking about pursuing all of these different interests. There are ways to go even further inside your school day, inside your whole academic career at the school. So I will just mention those as KUA's opportunities.
Great. Thanks, Leslie. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think all these schools offer some great travel abroad opportunities. But for New Hampton, I think a big thing is our traditions and other schools' traditions in boarding school. So for example, at New Hampton, a big tradition that wouldn't be an opportunity at a day school is International Night. So that is when we have over 30 countries represented, and all other these boarding schools here also have a lot of other countries represented. And the students will cook a meal in the dining hall, and we basically can go to each table and eat some of their food. And then after dinner, they will do some type of performance on stage to represent where they're from, these international students. So I think that's a really awesome tradition. And it's not necessarily a program, but it's something that's offered that's different and that could not be offered at a day school, because we truly bring a global community to Central New Hampshire.
Thanks, Nick. That's terrific. Chris, did you have something to say as you're smiling again?
Yeah, I mean, we have some pretty cool signature programs, I guess. We have some travel programs at Proctor where students spend a term on a tall ship or studying out west or doing language immersion in Spain. So there are, these are great programs because, again, they're just embedded into the curriculum and to the culture, and they're just part of the program, right? So I think, again, what we're all trying to say is that our schools, what we all offer is just integrated. And I think, what a day, day schools are great. Don't want to bash day schools, but since this is a boarding school panel, like what boarding schools can do is integrate all these things so well. And who's the beneficiary of that? The students, right? And that's really, I think, what we're trying to convey. It's just, it's really amazing. It's actually mind blowing when you look at these schools and the offerings that we have, and the faculty and the facilities. It really is amazing. So
Thank you very much. If no one has anything else to add, I think I'm going to start and offering some questions from our guests on the meeting, if that's okay. And we do have a question on, do any of your students continue to play club sports off campus during the school year? So in addition to what you may have for offerings for extracurricular, but they're already connected to a club team, do any of your students do that? And anyone who'd like to answer, feel free.
Yes.
Simply put, yes.
The simple answer is yes. The simple
Okay.
answer is,
So it's a discussion topic for sure to have with the school.
all of our schools are going to do everything we can to help accommodate and support students in whatever their passions are. Rooster's a little bit unique in terms of when a kid gets to a certain age, if they have the ability to have a vehicle, they can keep a car on campus to have that. So rather than having the parents go back and forth, that is an option that maybe is unique to us. I'm not really sure.
All right. Anybody else? Or Nick pretty much said it all.
yeah, I think Nick said it all. And obviously sometimes you get into situations where, someone's interest, the timing could be in conflict with, the school program. And that's always a conversation that we're going to have with students and families. But like Nick said, we want to support students when they're passionate about something. But I would also add that, like, for example, if you're really passionate about a particular sport and you're committed to playing on a club team, have that conversation with the coaches at our schools, because what you might find out is that we can actually support you in a way that maybe a club team can't support you with. So it's just something to think about.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chris. That is a very helpful tip in terms of thinking about that when you're already very connected to a team.
Right.
Lee, this is actually specific to you in terms of where you are one of the schools that has 50% day, 50% boarding. There was a question of, do you offer 5-day boarding?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, we don't. And for the reasons that I think others said, we don't want to create that culture of people leaving on the weekends. So no, we don't offer 5-day boarding. If anything, we have our day students that are coming back to us. So we have more day students that are spending more time at our school than they are at their homes. but no, we do not.
Thank you very much for addressing that. And we do have a question about communication. This is a great question. Communication with parents regarding academic progress and or challenges? Or how does that communication work with the parents? You have their amazing children at your school, and now they want to know kind of what's happening. How does that happen and how often? Whoever would like to jump in.
I'll pipe up.
Okay.
At KUA, every time one of our students, I think this might be a global question. I'll speak first about Learning Center students and then just the global ones that I think are probably similar to all of our schools. The Learning Center students who have what I was speaking about, SST or ILT, those group or individual sessions, every time they meet with their Learning Center teacher, the parents will get a pretty detailed email, kind of just like an update. What did they work on? What did they work on that day? What are they working on in the future? Any pain points, things like that. So I've actually been really impressed with the amount and quality of communication that comes directly from our Learning Center teachers to the parents. So that's very, very frequent. All of our students get, oh my gosh, they get so many comments. We have, I think we call them midterm comments because we have trimesters. So they get comments in September, they get another set of advisor comments in October. So now that I'm thinking about it, it's almost monthly set of comments, either from advisor or from teachers directly. So it's really frequent, maybe even more frequent than some parents would like. It's a lot. I think in this day and age, most boarding schools are really doing a fantastic job of frequently communicating with parents. And there's always going to be at least an advisor, if not also a Learning Center tutor, and these primary points of contact for the students. So parents know that they can ask these people questions any old time. That'll be made really clear to families who are your points of contact, how can you get in touch? Frankly, most of us share cell phone numbers, teachers share cell phone numbers. So the communication loops are really meant to be quite easy and frequent.
Great. Thank you, Leslie. Anyone else have anything to offer on that topic? I think it's what I'm hearing is it's frequent and often, and you're never left out of the loop. So I think that should be a reaffirming piece that I got out of the information. Let's see, we have actually kind of along the idea of the parent communication. What about parent visits? Especially, again, you're sending off your student most likely for the first time to a boarding school. And how does that look like? Or what does that look like in terms of families coming up to visit, and how often, or what does it look like at your school?
I can touch on that. So families are welcome to visit kind of whenever they'd like. We only have 1 or 2 closed weekends a year, one of which is orientation weekend. Some of our students, if they want to, can go home on the weekend if they'd like, but a lot will stay back on campus just because it's kind of their social spot. But I would say is that when you do spend time with your kid, whether that's, after a game or something, it's more quality time with your kids. That really increases when you go to boarding school, as opposed to at a day school where it's like, okay, you're dropping me off at school, then I'm going to sports practice, I'm going to dinner, then I'm doing homework. So when you actually have time with your kid, you're spending better quality time with them after a game, when you're sitting down with a meal. The phones are away and you're really actually engaging in conversation. So when you do, or if you decide to go to boarding school, when you do spend time with your kid, it's a lot more quality over that quantity.
Great. Thank you, Nick. Anyone else? Okay, we have plenty of other questions here. Someone asked about, this was do you do family style dinners at all at your campuses? And I think that's something where when families are thinking about their own family and now they're having their child go off, they're kind of interested to hear how that works. Who would like to add a little bit on that? No, Leslie?
I will.
Okay.
At KUA, we've kind of reformulated sit down dinner or formal dinner. It used to be, before the pandemic, it was almost weekly, I think, if not every other week. And then, the pandemic kind of threw everything up in the air, and we certainly weren't eating big meals together like that for 2 years. And now we've reformulated so that we have, I think, only 3 sit down dinners that are all school and assigned tables and, family style serving. A server gets up and gets the food, and it's a bit more methodical. But we do have all school lunches that are a similar idea, but they're not. The formal dinners used to be big dress up occasions, and it kind of felt like a lot, honestly, as a teacher, coach, dorm head, to be everyone gets dressed up. It was a lot. It was a big deal, took up a lot of time and energy. And now all school lunch feels like the same nice sitting together, meeting people you don't necessarily know, adults having nice seated conversations, but without like who's going to wear what and all the sort of energy of a sit down dinner, for lack of a better term, a little bit of drama. So I really like the balance that we have. We still have the like fancier all school dinner, usually around some sort of topic or event. And then we have more frequent all school lunches that are in waves, but still with like seated, seat assignments, adult at every table, getting to know each other, spending the time to sit and talk. So we've reformulated all school dinner a little bit.
Thanks very much, Leslie. And I know, again, from having visited, it's very nice when we've gone to see the faculty and actually anyone working. I don't know who the people are at the school. It could be anybody sitting with the students. And it is it is something that is natural. It is not something that's like, oh, who's at my table? It's more of just a welcoming atmosphere. And I think we've found that at every boarding school that we have visited. And it's really, in addition to us feeling welcomed, we could just feel the energy in the lunchroom. So it's really a very nice community feel in those dinner and lunch spaces. We've had several people ask about cars on campus. Is this something that is typically allowed at boarding schools? I know it's probably different for everyone, so just kind of have an idea.
As I mentioned before, it's allowed for us if you go through a certain protocol, but what's not allowed is just to determine when you want to use it based on weather or convenience or lack thereof. Can I go back to the last one and make a little pitch for boarding schools? As someone with a 6-year-old, that is something that cannot be replicated outside of boarding schools. And so for the families listening, if your child who's going off has a younger sibling, they have opportunities to keep that kind of relationship going, to be a babysitter, to go out and play on the fields or in the student center, as Chris was talking about earlier. My daughter runs to the dining hall because that's where her sisters are. Yeah, she looks at the boys, and I have to deal with that as a parent of a 6-year-old. But I think that's something that we can't really skip over here, the importance of kind of non-educational growth opportunities for kids that happen within boarding schools. They seem small, but over a 4 or 3 year span, it makes a huge impact on the growth and development of kids. So just wanted to share that piece.
Thank you, Nick. That's something that we don't always think about. And it's true. And I know, again, when we visited, we've seen all the kids on campuses, the dogs, and that true family setting. And so thank you for highlighting that. Let's see, what else do we have for questions? What about community service? Is there a requirement for graduation? Is it part of the ethos of your school? How does that work in terms of community service? You're very busy. I mean, the kids are very busy at a boarding school. You have your academics, you have your study hall, you have your activities. So how do you fit that component in, and is there a requirement?
I can touch on that with New Hampton. So we have 2 community service days a year. So we'll call off school for the day, and then within each advisory group, they will go to a certain place and do community service within the town. So that's twice a year. We'll do community service as an entire school, and class is called off for that day.
Great. Anyone else have something like that they'd like to offer?
We don't have a requirement, but we do have a dedicated community service block, or community action block that we call it. And there are different community service organizations that are run by students at KUA. And it gives our students the ability to stay with, one club or community service organization that they're really passionate about, or they can try a bunch and give back in different ways. So it's a dedicated block in our rotation of blocks of time. And students are basically required to do something in that block. So while we don't have a requirement in that way, they actually have to be somewhere in that block, and it's community action.
So it's built into their schedule, their schooling. Okay. Chris?
Yeah, just building on what Nick and Leslie have said, we have multiple opportunities for kids to be part of student affinity groups, and a lot of those groups are actually, creating action plans to serve, right? But the other thing that happens in, I think probably a lot of our schools is we actually need students to engage within our community to make our community run. So for example, like students at Proctor, through their advisors, take turns actually running the dish room. It's like they have to do dishes, right? In your dorm, there is a strong probability that a couple nights a week, you're going to be doing dorm cleanup, right? So or if there's a big snowstorm, maintenance needs help shoveling the walkways if we get a foot of snow, which by the way, we will get a foot of snow many times in the winter. So we need students to engage, right? So.
Great. Thank you. I get the impression that there is truly opportunities at all of the boarding schools for a student to engage in. Not only is it encouraged, but it's basically something that is part of your community. Lee, did you have something? I'm sorry if I cut you off.
Yeah, just similarly, that there are a lot of student action groups on campus, and when we're thinking about weekend activities, that is something that does happen quite frequently, that students will engage within the community based upon action or service groups that they formed on campus. But we actually are an IB school, an International Baccalaureate school. We're an open access IB school. So part of our curriculum is what we call our CAS strand, which is community activity action service. So there is a piece of our curriculum where students are actively engaging over a year to really build a community service project. And that is really based upon usually passions that they already have had or have started to ignite earlier in their time at St. Andrews within, social justice groups or interests that they formed through other classes. But it is a real part of student involvement on campus.
So there is a question. Thank you, Lee. I appreciate that. And especially they'll touch upon the IB. And I know that New Hampton has an IB program as well. And it sounds like students are prepared academically to take that challenge if that is something they're interested in. And, I don't know if this is really versus a boarding school question, or maybe there is a differentiation in terms of the diversity, equity, and inclusion, the topics of conversations around that aspect of learning in terms of like racial equity and climate, how that's managed at a boarding school. I'm not saying that it would be different than at a day school or somewhere else, but maybe you could touch upon like how as a community at a boarding school, rather than maybe yours specifically, but I guess that's your perspective. Maybe somebody could offer some information on that. A parent was interested.
I do think it's different at a boarding school. I'll just be really declarative about it because we're living together. And so that just inevitably means that the conversations are, oh gosh, the adjectives just flooded my mind, much more frequent, frankly, often much more urgent. When people live together, we're going to have to talk about, and I don't just mean DEIJ, I mean like all the hard things of living together. And so, I'm pretty sure all of us have some sort of director of DEI, DEIJ, we have a director of community and belonging, community life and belonging at KUA. Most of us now have a director level person who is facilitating conversations, monitoring the climate overall, monitoring kind of microclimates, meaning within dorms, within class years. But because we all live together, I'll speak for us, we feel the imperative to be having conversations, being proactive. We did a school climate survey in the spring that was really specifically about DEIJ. And we continue to work on equity and inclusion. And I would just emphasize that a lot of schools have made a lot of progress on visual diversity, on representation, but the next phase for boarding schools is really about inclusion. And that means so gender, LGBTQ status, all kinds of different ways of how we include all voices. And so I think because we all live together in close proximity, and also let's just call a spade a spade. All of us except for Lee are in New Hampshire, which is a very white state. We're in very white parts of New Hampshire. So again, even more important for us to be mindful about where we are, who we are, be deliberate about how we're crafting our community around us. We're all directors of enrollment management admissions. And so we're the front edge of creating every year how representative our community is going to be, how inclusive it will be. So I'll stop there with a little bit of like an overview.
Thanks, Leslie. Did anyone else want to add anything on that question? I think she did a great job.
Yeah, nothing better than what Leslie said.
Great. Thank you very much. Let's see, what else do we have for questions? And I know we talked about some of the fun traditions. I know we have, for those of you in the that have joined the Zoom meeting, your students are probably very excited about our fall festival tomorrow. And I know we heard about some of the traditions. If anyone wants to add in another tradition before we go, I know families want to hear about that. And I know there's, mountaintop climbing, there's lots of things that every school does. But I think before that, I want to ask how does a family know their child's ready for boarding school? Like, how do they know? How they, they're waking up every day, time to get up for school, breakfast, checking on, what do you have due for homework? How do you know that they're ready to launch into this really exciting opportunity? Or tips for them to figure out how they can feel more comfortable. How about that?
I know Chris Bartlett has something to say. I can see him working up to it.
See, everybody else can't see what we see on the screens, which are smiling faces. I have a lot of smiling faces here. So
yeah, I think it's a really great question. And I think, again, if you follow the process through, right, the students they're always right about how they feel in terms of their readiness to go. And so, like, as a parent, it's really hard because, you're sort of guiding your kid through middle school and maybe even early high school. And then, you're faced with this possibility of boarding school, and it's a big decision, right? And it's a decision, I think, that needs to be made in concert between students and parents. But if I had $1 for every kid who went through the entire admission process and said, you know what, I'm not ready to go, or not yet, that's fine. Like I see that quite often. Like, we lose more kids to just saying I'm not quite ready than we do to like any specific school. So you got to just listen to your kids. They're really intuitive. And if you we don't want kids coming to our schools kicking and screaming, because it's not going to work, right? So I think my advice would be just listen to your kid, and they will be able to indicate whether they're ready to go or not.
Yeah, and just to add on to that too, I think when you go through the admission process and you visit these schools, your kid, and when they feel and you can see it in their body language, how they feel about boarding school in that specific school when they are visiting. It's just something about, when you visit a school and then after you leave, that feeling. And so you'll know it when, your kid will visit a school and they're feeling afterwards, if they're ready for boarding school or not, after visiting and them seeing the facilities and all of the academic and co-curricular offerings that these boarding schools have.
thanks, Nick. Anyone else?
I wouldn't judge it on whether or not they're getting their homework done or their bag packed in your house, because they can do it at our place. I think that, that they're always going to do it better out of your house.
So you're saying the executive function support at the boarding schools is top notch.
I am saying that. I am saying that. And I'm saying that sometimes, I am a mom. I know that my kids do better sometimes when I am not there.
Mhm. So I have a more like, I won't say serious question, but there is a question about the I don't know if the word is requirement for the neuropsych report as part of your admission process. And if you can speak to that importance of it or how you feel. Could somebody talk about that? And I guess this isn't for all boarding schools. This is really for boarding schools that have learning support programs. So if anyone would like to add or jump on that,
I think the
Lee,
question
I guess
is,
Lee, then Nick. We got lots
Go
of
ahead, go ahead, Nick.
interest.
Yeah.
if you have one, I guess the question is, why would you not want to share it? And so if you are really trying to find the right school that can truly, truly serve your child and allow your student, your child to grow and develop and gain that independence, then why wouldn't you share it? Every year we receive them after enrollment, and we try our hardest to convey to families, please share with us. And I get it. I completely understand that there are nerves, there's concern that maybe, if I share it, my kid won't get into his or her dream school or their dream school. But think about the long term on this. Think about the long-term multi-year and beyond the boarding school experience. So I would just say, please share, and kind of going back to my prior comment this evening.
I'm
And
also gonna,
yes, I'm gonna say one more thing. I'm gonna add on to Nick's, and I'm gonna ask him a question. I would say, ask, is it a rarity of a Carroll family not sharing it though? Because typically when you get them later.
For Carroll specifically, yes, it's rare.
I was gonna call this out. So I was the director of admission at Carroll for a long time, for 7 years. And if a Carroll school family comes to KUA, I'm going to know how many evaluations you have, and I'm going to want to see them in a very positive, trust building way. I mean, I'm kind of playing off of Nick and Charlene's comment.
Yeah, but more in the component too. I think the family wants to know like the component it's used, and to maybe understanding the whole profile of the student.
And think of those neuropsych evaluations as a learning tool, meaning it's a tool for you as parents to take to these schools. We've already said this, but I'll just reiterate. Take to these schools and see what kind of dialogue you have with the director of the learning center or the director of academic support, whoever that person is. And if it doesn't happen on the day you visit, have it happen before you have to make an admissions decision. Because it was kind of what I was saying earlier, like use that as an inflection point. How do they talk about the neuropsych with you? Do you feel like they have the same understanding as Carroll people do about what that evaluation means? That's a really important kind of dialogue and, a compare and contrast probably with your Carroll experience.
Thank you, Leslie.
Yeah, I think, it's really a litmus test. I think that conversation around the neuropsych. I think it's a tender thing to share your child's neuropsych. Any testing that happens, on 1 or 2 days, that's really evaluating to the extent that a neuropsych is, and used to in the capacity that those tests are. So I can empathize with parents who are anxious about sharing it. I think what I always say to parents and anybody going through the admissions process is it allows us to have the conversation around the broad strokes of patterns of learning and patterns of cognitive strengths and vulnerabilities of a student. And it allows us to begin the conversation, to put a frame around the conversation. And I think, to Leslie's point, if a school is utilizing those tests in a way that is, not as the means to have a conversation, if they don't recognize the fluidity with which that tool can be used, then that is a really good litmus test of the the community that you're entering into, and the way that neurodiversity really is understood. So I also would say that I recognize in the past several years, it's been difficult to get current testing in some ways. Sometimes the testing that's been done has not been, let's say, the most authentic, because kids have not always been in person with their evaluators, and any admission director, admission professional worth their salt is really going to understand that. So I think that you as parents should feel empowered and confident as your child's advocate, sharing that information and expecting there to be a good conversation around it.
Great. Thank you, Lee. And now I can't believe it. We're at the end. This is what happens this night. All of a sudden, I'm like, how did that time go by so fast? Because we love chatting with all of you. So I'm going to ask if you could just really quickly just give a tip for families, or something you want to say about boarding school, whatever you want to offer, just like, the last 5 seconds for each of you to say something. So I'm going to put you all on the spot, and I'm going to go around my screen again. All right. I see Nick Ellis like looking up. So I'm going to start with Nick Wilbur. What would you like to say to parents or offer about boarding school? And, you could be sharing some of the same things.
If you can, take 2 steps behind your kids when you go to campus, and let your child follow their gut.
I love that. I love that. Nice advice. And okay, Lee.
Yeah, I would say, take this as an opportunity to get to know your child better. As I think Chris said earlier, it's a process that let them marinate. There's many months here to marinate, and as their parents, soak in it and really get to know them better. They're going to get to know themselves better. You're going to get to know them better. And at the end of the day, if you do it, if you just really embrace it all, I think you'll end up in the right place.
Great. Thank you. All right, Nick Ellis.
I would say through the admission process is just to be yourself and share your own unique self. I think the visits that I remember most are the ones where the students share something that's really unique to them and what they really enjoy and are passionate about. And then as far as with boarding school, it's truly a transformational experience. I went through it, my brother went through it, and I've seen it time and time again now that I'm working in boarding school. And I love seeing kids who really break out of their shell at boarding school, because they're surrounded by students and friends and adults who truly care about them and support them. So enjoy the process, and it really is a transformational experience going to boarding school.
Thank you. Leslie.
Oh man, where do I start? I want to be short and sweet. First, I would say trust Cece, Francie, and Charlene. They have so much experience and know your child so well. And if they think boarding school is a good place for your kiddo, you should really trust that and investigate. When I think of my experience at Carroll, there were times when we were like, oh man, this kid is ready for boarding school, and we just wanted the parents to be brave enough. And the other thing I will say is that Carroll has built incredible independence in your son or daughter or your child, and trust that if they're ready for boarding school and Charlene or Francie or Cece is telling you that, you should believe in it and give them wings, like you had the faith in Carroll School to give them wings. And now they are so much older and so much more prepared to do that. Carroll kids are so successful in boarding schools when they're ready for it. I feel really passionately about Carroll School kids' success. So just trust the system, trust the process.
Thanks, Leslie. All right, Chris, the finale. Except that your mic is on mute.
I need Learning Center tonight. So Leslie really nailed it. I think what she really expressed is that we actually have a ton of confidence collectively in the Carroll model and Carroll kids. I mean, it is actually remarkable to watch those students show up as ninth graders and just pull their tool belt, put their tool belt on and just start getting to work. And it's I'm not just saying that, it's really true. To a student, they are very, very well prepared to be in our schools. So you gotta believe that in the power of Carroll. My only advice would be just to also have fun, and this should not be a scary process. It should be it's a lot of quality time with your kid in a different kind of setting, and you're sort of watching them and supporting them as they continue to express themselves and who they are and what they want, and who they want to be. So it's really fun to watch that unfold. Just really quickly, I have an 8th grade daughter, and I took her to another school, and she's had some interviews. She's going to come here, but pretending that she has a choice. And it is so interesting to watch her talk about how excited she was to be able to talk to another adult about who she is and what her goals and aspirations are. She's not telling her parents any of that stuff. So it's pretty cool. Have fun.
Thank you so much. So that actually is probably very reassuring to feel here that like their student might not be sharing everything with them, but that they are outwardly ready to take on. And I want to add that in addition to those 9th graders that are ready, it's the 10th graders that are soaring also at these schools, and that the Carroll Upper School and the Carroll Middle School really does. Your students are amazing. So they are prepared, and they go with a toolbox that is so full. It's incredible. Myself, Cece, Francie, Carroll School, thank you, Nick Wilbur, Nick Ellis, Lee McGregor, Leslie Nesbitt, and Chris Bartlett. We are grateful for your time and your wisdom. And I know that families are walking away with a lot more in their toolbox to take on this adventure of looking at high schools for their students. So thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, parents, grandparents, students, for attending tonight.